Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? I am Andres. Welcome to a recap of The Legend of Korra Season 1. I am here with Wendy Lee Zaney. What is up, Wendy? Good to see you.
So good to see you. I am getting more and more used to just like seeing all of my friends in little boxes on my computer screen. But good to see you nonetheless. Thank you so much for having me today.
Of course, yeah. I'm so excited because I want to do this Legend of Korra series, and I immediately thought of you because I know you're a big Korra fan. We're all big Korra fans. So, it's now officially out on Netflix, so everyone is talking about it. That's why I'm so excited to talk about it once again because we get to revisit the show pretty much for the first time since the premiere. If you haven't gotten the Blu-rays, like a few other hardcore fans have. For the most part, people are being reintroduced to it since they first saw it or seen it for the very first time. So, how exciting is it, first of all, to just see Korra pop up in the news again?
It's really great whenever I see like Avatar The Last Airbender trending or Korra trending for whatever reason it may be. I'm just like, yes, because usually when it's trending, then that means we get hopefully some new audience and some new viewers watching the series. And that's all I want is for more people to know about Korra, for more people to know about Avatar The Last Airbender, because I think the story is really, really fantastic. I think the animation is really fantastic. I love the series. I'm like such a big fan of both of those series. So this is just like a nice walk down memory lane for me as well to kind of being able to, be on my couch and like sit down and just like slowly re-binge all the seasons.
Yeah, and it's incredible, right? Because a lot of people are being introduced to it for the first time, people who have never seen the show before. Because again, it was one of those shows, if I'm being really honest, and I think we can all talk about the structure of how it was released, where if you blinked, you missed it. There wasn't a lot of reruns. The last season was online. Like it was a really interesting way that Nickelodeon and CBS handled the entire release of the show because it's one of those shows where it didn't get sold to a different streaming service. Uh, the Blu-rays were hard to get. Like it's one of those shows where it's kind of a blink and you missed it kind of show, which is insane. But yes, this is The Legend of Korra, which follows the footsteps of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So we got to go there right away. People were talking about the anticipation for this show. 70 years later, Republic City. This is the city that Aang and Fire Lord Zuko, shout out to Fire Lord Zuko, created. People struggled with the first season as far as living up to the hype of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I didn't think it had to. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that whole living in the shadow of Avatar: The Last Airbender kind of thing in season one?
I think with a really successful series like Avatar The Last Airbender, it's natural for people to want to compare it to the first one. And when the first series was that good, it's hard to like everybody's already overhyped because of the existing reputation of such a good series. So you start watching this one and the tone already is, I would say, way more mature starting off because in the beginning, if we go all the way back to episode 1 of Avatar Last Airbender, it's like fun and Katara and Sokka are like fishing for, was it like penguins or like some hybrid, I can't remember what it was, and it was like more like kid jokey, and it was really cute for that younger audience, which obviously as the series went on it got more and more mature. I feel like Korra, because when we see her in like quote unquote present time, she is much older than Aang was when that series started. So the story itself and the tone itself was already a little bit more mature, and the audience or were already familiar with the benders and the different various nations and what Aang and Team Avatar had achieved in the very first series. So I think the hype was already there. And when you watch through the first series, the first few episodes, and it's with any series, I feel like you need to establish not just the main character, like who she is, but you also need to then introduce like Team Avatar 2.0. And that takes kind of a second for everybody to kind of gel and find the rhythm. And that works for us, the audience, as well, to be like, okay, well, who's Team Avatar this time? Where is so and so? Are we going to see the OG cast members in this and that? So I think that there was just a lot of factors playing into people seeing this series for the first time.
Yeah, I feel like it's really part of me is disappointed by the way it was received initially, at least for a vocal part of the audience, where a lot of people who are fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender, when they heard about this new show, were extremely excited, but they're so connected to the original crew of Zuko, Aang, Sokka, Katara, that crew, that almost like anything that isn't Aang is like hearsay and it's like blasphemy. And that to me kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because to me I was like, hey guys, this is a new story. It's supposed to be new, but it is supposed to reflect obviously the previous crew, because we get the statue of Aang in the middle of Republic City. We get the conversations about the past, and in season one, we get that incredible flashback, which obviously we're going to talk about, that got everyone excited. And they're like, I'd rather watch this show. And I was like, yeah, this looks like a great like miniseries. But at the same time, I'd rather see something new. I'd rather see new characters, new stories, a new perspective. And the fact that Korra is a female avatar also plays into that. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I was so excited, and especially and if you don't mind just like me jumping into kind of like the very first episode, my
Oh,
perception of
yeah.
that. Because I was thinking, how are they going to introduce us? And that's like really important for you to have the titular character in a show. How do you bring this character and show them off to the audience? And that's like your first impression, right? And I love that they actually started her when she was, I would say, maybe like Aang age, maybe seemingly a little bit younger, but she's got this complete opposite attitude than Aang. Aang was, like airbender, so like very tranquil, calm. Obviously, he's got his kid side and his joyous side, but in the beginning, he was just kind of like, I'm not the Avatar. I don't know what you're talking about. And with Korra, she kicks down the wall. I'm the Avatar. You're gonna deal with it, or you got to deal with it, and hooked me right there. And then I was like, okay, this is gonna be her. Hopefully, that doesn't really change throughout the series. And obviously, she grows, but she kept that within the first, it set the tone for that character. And right away, I was hooked. I didn't really want like another, how do I want to say it? Just like, I didn't want a carbon copy of Aang. We
Yeah.
got it, and Aang is amazing, and no one else could be. I don't want another Aang because Aang was so good, and that's
Mhm.
what I got me really excited about Korra. And I don't think they try to make her different, and she's really, really multi-layered, as you can see throughout the entire series. So I loved her like right away because she was spunky.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like people always compare Korra to Aang, and I get it because they're both avatars, but at the same
Mhm.
time, they're completely two different people with different upbringings, different cultures, different background. Korra is much more headstrong. She doesn't hesitate with bending versus Aang hesitating with firebending, earthbending. She's not in touch with her spiritual side, which Aang is. That probably rubbed people the wrong way. And the fact that she is, like you said, sassy, she owns herself, she's confident, overconfident in some
Mhm.
scenes in season one, to the point that people weren't really gelling with that. And to me, I love that aspect of Korra because it's different from Meg, and because it's a different personality that we haven't seen an Avatar have before. So I don't know. I love her personality. I love that she's different and headstrong, which is why, again, and I probably won't dwell on it too long, but the idea of a live adaptation of Korra to me would be like perfect. But again, that's a
Ooh,
whole different
well,
conversation.
look, if they can even get the first live action series off the ground, then we can
Yeah,
talk about Korra. Let's do that. I mean, that that could be a bonus episode that we do maybe if you want to talk. I'm sure you've already talked about it.
we have. Yeah, a lot. Mainly
Yeah.
because of me. Because I feel like it's different. I feel like with Aang, it's harder to adapt Avatar: The Last Airbender than it is to adapt Legend of Korra. And I
Okay.
have theories as did you say how so?
Mhm.
Because of the expectations of a character like Aang. To me, being a 12-year-old kid, one, that's a little bit harder already. Being a live adaptation of having the fun, bubbly personality, but at the same time, there's like extinction level stakes of the planet, which is harder to balance in live action. Versus Korra, she's what, 18, 17 in the show, already easier. She's very headstrong. She's sassy. She's fun. She's funny. pro bending is an easy thing for people to swallow than it is necessarily for other parts of bending. To me, it's a more digestible to an audience that hasn't seen the Avatar world. So I think it's easier to adapt than maybe an Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is why I'm more pro adapting Korra than I am pro adapting Avatar, if that makes sense. But anyways, let's get into season one. Season one, obviously, we see Korra being mastering the three elements. She finishes the first episode mastering firebending with the White Lotus, which is incredible, in the Southern Water Tribe, which again has grown significantly. She wants to go to Republic City to train with Tenzin with airbending. We get to meet Tenzin. We get to see the incredible performance by J.K. Simmons as Tenzin. It's amazing. I think he's one of the best parts of the entire show. And Tenzin is an amazing character himself. I love Tenzin. To me, he's like the Giles of the show.
That's so correct. Absolutely correct.
Right?
Because Tenzin kind of came off in the beginning very like serious, taking his job and his duty as councilman and making sure he carries on his father's legacy and make sure that like the Republic City runs, the way Aang intended for it to run. But then like as the series grows and as we as the audience grow with Tenzin, more and more of the comedical side comes out. And I think Korra really brought a lot of that out of him, honestly.
Yeah, obviously it's by season 2, season 3, Tenzin is like hysterical. But again, it takes a minute in season 1. And I love the idea of Korra going to a city that's almost when I was rewatching it, it's interesting because it's not a nation, right? It's not the Earth Nation, it's not Southern or Northern Water Tribe, and it's not the Fire Nation. This is like its own little self-governed society that is an enormous city where all benders of all kinds live together. And with that, obviously, comes troubles like the triple threat triad, gangs like that, and also the idea of pro bending, which is something that I don't know if it's exclusive. I won't say it's exclusive to Republic City. It might be. But that idea of bending for sport instead of bending for battles or wars is something so interesting to me. So let's go to pro bending. What'd you think when you first saw pro bending? At least your first time watching it.
Oh, I was excited because I didn't
Really?
I guess for me as an audience, like I didn't really think of bending outside of the box as in I guess you can say like trained by the first series that like the bending is used to, like whether it's for war or if you want to like master the four elements as far as the avatar goes. And I never thought of it as a sport at all. And so when they brought up that idea and I was like, well, why not? This is so many years after and we have all these benders and we're at the very first season everything was peaceful at the time. So why not use it as a form of entertainment because you're not using it to just like fight people and so it's kind of like good for the economy, I guess, good for tourism for the people who, if it is exclusive to Republic City, people can come and watch. And I especially liked how they introduced pro bending to Korra because I think for Korra, the way she grew up, she was so sheltered and protected because she's the avatar. You can't go anywhere with your polar bear dog. You can't go anywhere. And so when she finally arrives in Republic City, I love that she just was just like really out of her element, kind of like a Princess Jasmine in out of the palace sort of a deal, where she didn't know. She was like, I don't have money for food, I don't have this and that. And I think it came at the perfect time because she was having so much trouble connecting to airbending, and she was also yeah, she's used to, training and using fire bending or earth bending or water bending in certain ways. But I think pro bending really opened her eyes to say, I can really fight creatively. I don't have to do it XYZ way. Look at all this way that people, dodge and weave and bob and whatever. Like you can mix and match. And especially her being the avatar, she can mix and match all the elements together. And I think that was a really good plus for her.
Yeah, I mean it's throwback to season 1. I mean not to season 1, to Avatar: The Last Airbender, because it's one of those ideas that Avatar: The Last Airbender has always been about martial arts, and I love the idea of the exploration of different martial arts from different cultures, different parts of the world, and we see the styles of water bending, fire bending, earthbending all have their own version and their own style that we see with Katara and Toph and Zuko. And it's that idea of Avatar kind of being the MMA expert, right? The mixed martial arts champion, of him mastering all four elements. He's also mastering different versions of martial arts. And that's the idea that obviously Iroh talks about in season 3 of Avatar, season 2, I believe, of Avatar, when he gives Zuko the lesson of transferring the lightning.
Mhm.
And he says, if you study all the forms of bending, you can become a better firebender. Even though they're only bending fire, if you learn different stances, if you learn different strategies, you become a better martial artist. And that's when eventually Zuko, the dragons facing Azula at the end, et cetera, et cetera. But it's that idea of pro bending being a different version of the martial arts form, because you get to see how people battle in modern eras. It's so fascinating. I as a sports nerd and as like just a nerd in general, I was like, this is really interesting, because again, it paints that picture of like what, Zuko versus Mako, right? Two extremely different versions of firebending. Who would have the upper hand? And it's a very different style. They're both very talented, but it's that idea of like Zuko was trained in traditional martial arts, and Mako was trained for sport, and disarming your opponent or pushing your opponent back. So
Mhm.
really fascinating stuff with pro bending for sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. And I also that kind of brought me back to the original Avatar series where we first met Toph and
mm,
the Pebble, or what was the guy's name that she had to fight?
the
The
Boulder,
Boulder. Sorry, I wanted to call him the Pebble because I think she at one point made fun of him. But yeah, like that reminded me of that. But I believe that was kind of like an
absolutely.
underground, yeah, like Fight Club, and now this is like
All
arena
bending.
status.
Yeah, and it's all bending, which is different as well.
Hmm.
My second thing in my notes is obviously the big through line inside the season 1, which is Amon, and the idea of non-benders. And this is something that I think Korra and the writers behind Korra in season 1 nailed right off the bat, because throughout all of Avatar: The Last Airbender, besides maybe Sokka, we don't care about non we don't care about non-benders. We just
Right,
don't give a crap. We're
right.
just like, oh yeah, let's go to the benders. And it's that idea of like, how does a society that has lived for, I believe, over a couple thousand years, um, just how does that non-bender aspect of society coexist with the bender society?
Mhm.
How are you okay with people who can literally burn cities down with that kind of power versus someone who's completely at their will and can't really stand up against them? That's why there's always this idea of firebenders doing violent acts. I think that's why even Amon chose a firebender to be his main antagonist in his made up story. Spoilers. Um,
Mhm.
because it's that idea of like the violence of a firebender just being so brash, and so cocky that he can do whatever he wants because he can literally manipulate fire with his mind. Uh, it's that idea of that threat being tossed to non-benders, and a mom being like, wait a minute, we're living like lower class citizens. I believe that's even the exact term used by the protester in the very first episode. What did you think of that? Because as soon as I saw that, I was like, yo, he kind of has a point.
I agree with you there because obviously he's the antagonist. So
Mhm.
when we'll get to that later, but when he first started, and you kind of, eh, I think the whole premise of bringing him on and the Equalists, I think that really opens your eyes to exactly what you said. That they didn't really in the very first series showcase the nun benders too much. Obviously, it
Mhm.
was really focused around the Avatar and the people who could bend because it was on screen it looked great, you could water bend, all the flourish, all the fun stuff, but then you really take a look at how they live, and I would say, you owe it to a few bad eggs like the Triad, who took their bending and took advantage of it and used it to abuse people, and that's where that hate starts. Is, oh well, the benders think they're better than those of us, and they don't. What makes them better, and Amon really definitely played on that, and that's why these rallies were so successful. But I can't say like I completely disagree with that because everything was supposed to be equal, amongst non-bender and benders until it wasn't. Until a few bad eggs ruined it for everybody, essentially.
Yeah, but it's also the idea of like the whole theory behind Amon, I believe it's episode 2 or 3, when we
Mhm.
learn that he can take away people's bending, is that his concept is like, wait a minute, if we go back to a time where bending never existed, we will finally be equal, right? But it's also
Right.
the idea of him literally invading the human bodies of people to take away their bending, which again is like a whole different thing of like, well, that's kind of evil too.
Yep. Yeah.
um, it really paints a picture, but that's why also the antagonist of Tarlock is there, because Tarlock then uses that as a way to abuse non-benders. And there's that
Mhm.
scene, I believe, episode 5 or 6, where he's rounding up non-benders and Korra's fighting for them. And that lady has that incredible line, you're our avatar too.
Yes.
She tells Korra, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
she really has a point where it's like, if you're the avatar, you can't just be all about bending. You have to fight for the non-benders too. And sometimes that means going up against people who might have your same ideology, like a Tarlock, because they kind of saw eye to eye, Tarlock and Korra, about taking down Amon and about him being dangerous, but they went about
Mhm.
it different ways.
Yeah. They certainly did. And I think, how do I want to say this so it's not like a really triggering opinion, I guess. I think the success of Aang and his stories really brought the Benders to the forefront even more. And especially years later, as we see in Korra, there's this giant, like, is it even a statue? It's huge.
Yeah.
That, as you come into Republic City. So I think, in a sense, at this point, where Legend of Korra started, the Benders were already put on a pedestal, maybe even more so than before, because they could do things, they could produce things. Maybe they make the city go because you don't need to build fire; you can just bend fire. And so I still see where Aman is coming from, but the way he went about it, I was just like, okay, let's not just go and invade people and take away their will to bend. I think Tarlock I almost said Katara. I think Korra and Tarlock had the right idea, but I think at some point Tarlock really wanted to serve his own personal agenda, as opposed to Korra, being the good person that she is, wanted to actually try to be good, but she's also much younger and she's not used to all this, like, political stuff. I would say this series is even more political than, like, the first one ever was, because you have,
Mm,
like, the councilman, you have the city, you have all this and
yeah.
that. It's really, really complex.
Yeah, and it even gets more political as the series goes along. By season 4, it's an entire ideology of
Yeah.
politics, which is incredible, which is why season 4 is amazing. But yes, I love the scene where Tarlock puts Mako and Bolin and Asami in jail, and
Mhm.
and Korra comes in to confront him in his office. And obviously, we get that amazing fight sequence. But I love the line where Korra's like, "You're using your power to intimidate me," and he's like, "So are you." That's literally what you're doing right now. And I was like, "Yo, he's got a straight up point."
Yeah. And that's
Where
what I liked a lot about the series, that when you age the characters like these, they can have these, like, back-to-back banters like that. It's kinda like, "Well, I can one up you, well, I can one up you too, and what are you gonna do about it?" So it's
well,
more than just, like, the fight with bending. It's fighting with your words, like wordplay, swordplay sort of a deal.
yeah, but it's also this concept of like, and again, because we are adults, we can talk about this. Where in the first series, we're kind of caught up in the story of like, yeah, let's fight oppression and let's fight evil. But then when you realize it in a political angle, if I am a councilman of a city, or if I am someone like that, and I view the avatar is almost like a demigod inside this world, which has final authority, final say on everything. And you start to realize, wait a minute, she's not an elected leader. She's not a person that everyone chose. Who is she to say, do what I say because I'm the avatar? Even though we love that with Kyoshi and Roku, because they did the exact same thing
Yep.
in their flashbacks when Kyoshi was like, I'm the avatar, you do what I say. And we're like, yeah,
Mhm.
Kyoshi. And Roku did the same too. When he was like, I'm the avatar, you do what I say. And you kind of have to, because they're ultimate power. They're gods, essentially. and yet you start to question that now within the Legend of Korra, because you start to say, wait a minute, is that fair? How does she handle the weight of that power? How can you delegate that power? Really interesting stuff, to the point where Amon can be seen as almost um, in the right. If I really do feel this, and let's go straight to the whole Noah talk thing.
Okay.
If Amon was who he said he was, I think
Okay.
Amon might have been right, because when the whole twist of like he's actually the most powerful waterbender, bloodbender, Noah
Mhm.
talk, who's just really angry at benders, and will probably take away everyone's bending on the planet to the point where he's the ultimate avatar. If you think about it, I was thinking about it. I was like, what if Amon got rid of everyone's bending in the planet? It would take him forever, but
Yeah.
he would be the avatar. He would be the ultimate power. He would be the god of the world.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was like, oh, if that twist didn't happen, he kind of would have had a point. But at the same time, I have to ask, first of all, Wendy, did you like that twist of him actually being a bloodbender? Because people hate. I remember people hated that when it happened.
Did they?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
and two, um, do you feel like that benefited the story by making him a bloodbender?
Ooh, okay. Well, I'll answer the second question first, because I've always, ever since bloodbending was introduced, I right away was like fascinated by it, because it's so
Cool.
it's cool, but it's also
It's
like
so
evil
cool.
and terrible. Like
It is.
it's terrifying. And so when it was revealed, I was like, "Oh, they brought it back. Like they didn't let it go." And I was, half of me was hoping they wouldn't let it go, and the other half of me was surprised that they showcased it so early on in this series, which meant, what else are we going to see in the rest of the season if they're already putting bloodbending out front? I don't remember not liking the twist. I think probably because I was expecting something. I had a feeling that he wasn't just a nun bender already.
Hmm.
I just didn't fully trust him right away. I was like, "You got a mask on, you got, like, secret rallies with the flyer with a map on the back," you know? I wasn't really buying his story totally, though it was very convincing, and you're right. Had that entire, if Amon, it was just Amon and not Noatak, but, like, then then yeah, you're right. Then I would have said, I can see, I would go to a rally and see what this guy has to say, and then, for my own opinion. But the twist was, because it wasn't just like one twist. There was like multiple little twists in there as well, that just made my jaw drop when I watched it, and when I listened, when I was just like, "Wait, what?" And then they revealed another, and then it was, "Wait, what?" And I don't remember not liking it.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
remember not
Well,
liking it.
I remember a lot of people were pretty upset because they wanted him to be
A
uh,
non-bender.
not just a non-bender, but in the story, he says he's like chosen by the spirit world and chosen by the spirits to like actually bring balance to the world.
Right.
Which is another whole thing that's really, it sounds really cool. And again, we get into the spirits in season two,
Mhm.
literally an entire thing about them. But that idea of somehow being chosen to do that, again, even if you didn't believe that, it opens up this different concept of like who is Amon. And I love that uh, whole debate that was going on back in 2012 when this show premiered, where I was in the forums, the Avatar forums that are still up, I think,
Wow.
uh, talking about who is Amon and what he actually can do. Because just the idea of taking away someone's bending, it is kind of the ultimate power. And that's why Noah Talk said that to Yakone. Speaking of Yakone, let's go straight to that scene. Uh, that scene, see what that scene did and what Yakone did and what that story flashback did, which I think it's only like, I think 2 minutes total. The
That's
entire
the one,
flashback
the flashback with the kids, right?
with Aang. Yeah. With
Oh,
Aang.
okay.
Yeah.
In the
With
courthouse.
yeah, with Aang grown
Okay.
up, with Sokka, Toph, we see everyone except for Zuko and Katara in that
Correct.
flashback,
Correct.
which is all. But I was like, bro, Toph is speaking. Like as soon as Toph spoke, I was like, that's her adult voice. It's incredible. Uh,
Come on, Twinkle Toes.
yeah, and they nailed the adult voices. By the way, I thought it
Yeah.
was
I wonder
incredible.
if it's the same actress. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean,
Sounds
it
so
just sounds
similar.
so different, but it sounds so perfect at the same
Mhm.
time. But that idea of Yakone being this bloodbender who like was a gangster in Republic City, but that scene when Councilman Sokka, which is another funny thing to say, the fact that he's kind of like the president.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what,
uh,
Sokka? Class
oh, I
clown
thought that was
Sokka?
perfect. That was like, hell
So
yeah,
good.
Sokka,
I
hell yeah.
expected nothing less.
But the idea that he obviously tosses the theory out, like, bro, yeah, you can bloodbend whenever. Who cares? You're still
Right.
guilty. Like, I love that he didn't fall for the whole like, well, it's impossible. And he's like, so was metal bending. Like, bro.
Exactly.
But when he starts bloodbending everyone, that's when you realize in that scene when you see Toph just floating in midair and struggling to even move, you start to realize like this is Toph. Like we see her in season 4, but Toph is the kind of person who is one of the most powerful benders in the planet. Like just period. She's so
Mhm.
freaking powerful, and here she is like unable to move. You start to realize like, wow, bloodbending really is kind of like the most powerful bending. And same with Aang, when you're like, oh man, he's schooling the Avatar right
Yeah.
now. And then when Aang wakes up and then comes after him, uh, and he tries to like snap his neck in half, and Aang just goes Avatar state mode. It's incredible. It's so cool. Talk to me about that flashback and watching that for the first time, because I was like, this is so cool.
That was really great. I love that introduction to Yakone because you starting it's fascinating first of all that he bent the rules essentially of blood bending because he can bend without a full moon.
Yeah.
So that already makes him a very dangerous and very powerful person. Like to blood bend is you're in total control of another person
Yeah.
completely, which is like great power and also really really scary. So I remember and I think they played it a couple of times because I know Korra had the vision and then they did the actual flashback and kind of rewatching the series I actually had forgotten about the flashback. So watching it back I was like, what do they do with this guy? He is so powerful that, like you said, Toph is up in the air. Aang literally couldn't move and almost got his butt handed to him the second time that they had a run-in when he was trying to actually capture the guy. It really goes to show that bending when you have bending like blood bending, I think that's almost something that like should if you were to stop any kind of bending, maybe that's the one to do. If you're not using it for good to heal people or something like that, that's not a good bending for anybody to have because you can take advantage of that power so quickly, just like Akon did, just like Amon did, and just like Tarlok did.
Yeah, and yeah, Noah Talk. I I call him Amon too, but Noah Talk as well.
Noah talk, yeah.
Uh, yes, which is why I think he's like a perfect villain in the sense of like just power wise, where the creators behind the show said, what are you going to do? We don't have another Sozin's Comet. Korra's kind of unstoppable. What else can you do? And then someone was probably like, well, bloodbending. I mean, if you can do that, you can probably kill the Avatar. Like that's how powerful it is if you're a really good bloodbender. And that's what Amon was. He's
Mhm.
probably one of the best waterbenders, if not the greatest waterbenders we've ever seen. Uh, to be able to do that so easily. So I love that whole dynamic of the power of bloodbending and the way Tarlok uh, and Noah Talk both use that to their advantage. Because when Tarlok did it the first time, I was like, yo, and he starts doing the whole hand thing. And I was like, bro,
And the
that's
crazy part is
incredible.
you see how much people are in pain because they don't know what's happening, so their eyes go wide and their pupils dilate, and they're just like, "I literally do not have control over my body, but I can still think, for myself." So, like, what is
Yeah.
happening? And that's gotta be terrifying to not have any control of, especially for someone like Korra, and she had, like, several times they did that to her
Yeah.
throughout, especially towards the end of season 1, just multiple times. So, like, this poor thing of already trying to at a young and I know Aang was young too, but trying to master the fourth element of airbending, trying to almost a coming of age because she's never really been outside of the water tribe up until then. And then now she's got all this weight of not just being the avatar on her shoulders. She's got to like figure out and put away these bloodbenders, and like that's a lot for her to like mentally to deal with and physically as well.
Yeah, and another thing I want to talk about when it comes to Amon and his crew, I love Amon's crew, by the way. I think it might be one of my favorites. The idea of a callback to the original series with Ty Lee and chi blocking. that is to me, as soon as they started doing the and they do the sound effect, I was like, yo, Ty Lee, does she have like descendants or something? And I was like, oh no, it's actually being taught. Like she teaches or she taught chi blocking to the next generation. And eventually it came up to the way it was now, to the point now that chi blockers are probably the most efficient uh, villains that any bender can face, to the point that they kind of kick every bender's butt that we see at the very final episodes, the two final episodes when we see them fight the White Lotus.
Hmm.
And even someone like Lieutenant, shout out to Lieutenant, he's my boy, who has the incredible deep voice, but also has the two electrocution batons. And it's that idea of like, Amon says it in the arena, technology equaling the playing field between us and the benders,
Hmm.
having the Asami electrocution glove, having Future Industries be that kind of equalizing factor. They're like the Tony Stark of the Korra Avatar world, to the point that they can fight back. But I love the chi blocking. I love the electrocution stuff. I love Lieutenant and that squad of like non-benders who are just as lethal as benders. To me, I was like, that's peak. That's excellent. I don't know what you thought when you saw chi blocking.
Oh man, I was so happy to
Yeah.
see it again on screen, that same style. And it was literally the same reaction as you. I remember like back what, like 2012 or whatever, watching the series, and I stood up because I love Tylia, like
Love
love
Tylee.
her. And the way she moved, and it was very different from what we saw with the existing benders at the time. And to see that, I was like, oh dang. And it's, you're right, and it's like like hitting all those pressure points, blocking their chi, and you're like, well, that's a way to take to disable a bender temporarily for sure. And that fits in perfectly within that theme of the Equalists.
Yeah.
Completely perfect. And they were top-notch fighters, which brings me to another point. I think the fighting animation in this
Oh,
entire
so
series
cool.
overall, oh, so good. And I think that also helped with aging everybody up to like 18 plus for the main characters. Like it
Yeah.
just looked excellent on screen, and it was just like a feast for my eyes every time. And especially these, they were long extended fight scenes, and I absolutely loved them.
Yeah, and a lot of that to me was Amon. The way they animated Amon to move was like so. Just rewatching it really kind of brought it back for me, where he has his hands behind his back. There's a scene where when Korra punches fire bending up towards the airship, and he just nonchalantly moves to the side. The way he dodged lightning bending from, like, I forgot the guy's name, the gangster leader, Lightning
Right.
Bolt Zolt. Uh, the way he like just moved out of the way, which if you think about it, I guess he can use bloodbending to dodge. Uh in a psychic level where he can actually like make you move your hand slightly and you didn't even notice it.
Yeah, that's
uh
true, because no one was the wiser until the very end that
yeah,
he was a bender of any sort.
it's almost like telekinesis. Like he's almost a telekinetically enhanced human being where he can move human bodies to the way he wants them to.
He's
So
Jean
he can,
Grey.
yeah, and he can make it look like he's not manipulating anyone, and he's just that good of a fighter.
Yeah.
Incredible, incredible stuff with the animation. It really was. The design of Amon is beautiful. I love the mask. His suit is super cool. Like it's really, really cool stuff. But let's get to the final two episodes before we talk about our favorite moments and scenes. The final two is Civil War, obviously, but it leads to the most freak out moment I had throughout the entire series, probably even more than the flashback, which is the reveal of General Iroh. And when they said General Iroh, uh, with Donnie Bosco's voice, Dante Bosco's voice, I apologize. Uh, and immediately you knew it was a descendant of Zuko's, because Zuko's my favorite, obviously. Zuko and Sokka are my two favorites. But Zuko's always been my favorite. So as soon as I heard his voice and as soon as I heard General Iroh, and I was like, ah! I
Yeah.
lost it. I want to hear your thoughts on that, seeing that scene.
It was a freak out moment, for sure, because they said General Iroh, and I was like, at first, and I don't know, maybe my brain was just like, it just farted that day when I was watching, and I was like, well, how is that possible? I was like, there's no way he can be alive. And then so they brought him in. I was like, ah, okay, descendant. And then the voice came through, and I literally lost it. I was like, they brought him back. They brought him back just for this role. And it was really exciting because Zuko it's hard to pick a favorite. I think for it was really hard for me to say. I mean, I do have like a bias, but I would say everybody like I love Team Avatar. So obviously Zuko is one of my top choices. Just to, and I the whole relationship and everything that like Zuko and Aang had to go through throughout the first Avatar series is what really made that story so special for me. You know, you have this Zuko like chip on the shoulder kind of a guy and all of that and having to go through what he went through and it's just really nice to see it's a nice reminder to see how far Zuko had come and with his relationship with Aang, with himself, and then his legacy living on
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
general. Like that was the best. And I was like, Zuko to the I mean, it's not Zuko, but like Zuko to the rescue.
Yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, the idea of having your descendants kind of live up to your legend that is Fire Lord Zuko, which again is just incredible. One of the most amazing and powerful firebenders. That's why when he starts flying, kind of like Azula used to do with his two rocket boosters and his two hands down on his side, I was like, this is peak. This is like all I ever wanted. But yeah, we got that final battle between the United Forces and the Equalists, and we get introduced, obviously introduced. I mean, lightly, but Asami and her father, Sato,
Mhm.
and the idea of him using his finances and his money to amplify the equalist movement. And again, we get the character of Asami, who I think is one of the most underrated, in my opinion, characters ever. And I'm really going to say that because she is like a little mini Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Uh, and I love that because you get to see that amplified in further seasons. But even in the first season, you get to see Asami, who's not only one of the most capable martial artists on the show, but she is that Sokka character. And people really sleep on Sokka, Wendy. I'm telling you, like I rewatched that series and I'm like, bro, y'all would be dead without Sokka. Like every time he's a genius. Like he really is. Just because he's super goofy, like he really is very goofy. I think people forget how super smart he was to come up with all the plans and to come up with battle strategies that no one had even thought of, to the
Mhm.
point that I was like, oh, Asami is the Sokka of the group. She is the thinker. She is the one who can plan things out and strategize better than anyone else. What do you think of her character?
I loved her the second she took off her helmet and did the swoopy Lucy Lou hair thing.
Yeah.
Immediately fell in love with her. And what's really great about Asami is that she's super smart, right? Her dad made sure that she was super trained in martial arts. She's completely capable of defending herself and getting herself out of a situation. Um, and she's a girl who knew what she wanted. She never played Demzo in distress. Ever. And especially if you take a look at her first meeting with Mako, she was right away like, hey, you're cute. I like you. Let's go do this. Like she was very forward, but not in a conceited way. It was just she's so confident. And I was like, yes,
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah, that really stood out to me rewatching it as well, where I was like, "Oh, Asami asked him out." That's
And he was
something that
just
I
like,
was like,
"Ugh."
"Yeah, I mean, seriously, lucky guy." But it's that idea of like she's so genuinely kind and nice and smart and has just one of the most capable minds on the show, and in the entire series, to be honest. So I love the character of Asami. I love how she grows throughout the show,
Mhm.
all the way through season 4, which is she has some heartbreaking moments. She has some triumph moments in season 3, I believe. Um, it really is one of my favorite characters. But a quick shout out to Mako and Bolin. Uh, what do you guys? What do you think of them two?
The fire ferrets.
Yeah.
I love them so much. When I actually first I think Bolin was the first person we met because in the pro bending arena when Korra snuck in,
Yeah.
he was kind of like, "Oh no, she's with me." He reminded me a lot of one of my friends, like that kind of like like demeanor and the way he talks. So immediately, I liked Bolin, and Bolin kind of gave me a bit of a Sokka vibe,
Hmm.
personality wise. Like
Hmm.
he wasn't stupid or anything. He's not dumb or anything like but he's just a little bit goofy, like a much needed comic relief. And I love the bond he had with his brother, especially when they had a little bit of a tiny bit of a fallout because of Korra kind of coming in between them just for a short time. And I love that they were able to kind of take the moment, let's like be apart for like a day, like you know, like obviously when they had their pro bending match right after that whole thing happened, it didn't go well, and then you know they're just kind of coming up out of the platform and like we're brothers forever. Okay, we're gonna fix it. And they always had each other's back, which is something I really liked seeing, and that kind of brought me back to the whole Katara Sokka sort of a deal too. And I enjoy having like a sibling sort of a pair in these series.
Yeah, and I believe there's a line. Oh no, I'm thinking of season 2. I'm sorry.
Oh.
But the idea of siblings is a very strong through line throughout the entire show of Korra and of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm thinking of Tenzin siblings in season
Oh,
2. By the way, Kaya. Shout out to Kaya and Boomy. Kaya's my girl. I love Kaya. But let's close up with any of your favorite moments in the show throughout season 1.
Ooh, okay. Before we jump into it, I just want to point out
Sure.
this series has like notoriously bad parents. If you think about
Yes.
it, Asami's dad, not a great. I mean, yes, he raised his daughter to take care of herself and made sure she was trained, but he was like not so good. And then especially Akone, like terrible.
Yeah.
Like you make your
Yeah.
kids bloodbend each other. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Without him, without that treatment, I don't think either of them, Noatak and Tarlok, would have, not saying that they wouldn't be in Republic City and like being on the council or whatever, but I don't think like the whole Amon thing would have happened without that sort of a bloodbending, like ordeal where you pit the two brothers against each other. I remember at the end of the series, I was like, these are bad parents.
Yeah. I mean, it really just opens up the idea of, obviously, I love the line that Yakone says to Noah Talk when he's like, "I made you. You can't hurt me." Because it's that idea of like horrible parents who abuse their kids and then use their power over them.
Mhm.
Really, really interesting stuff in that little flashback for sure.
Yeah.
All right, a couple of your favorite moments, any of
Oh,
them?
there's so many. There's so many, but
Yes, I think I named a few of mine. So,
did you? Okay.
yeah.
Oh, one of the top ones, and this includes every time this character was on screen. So my favorite character, like my bias, if you would say, like within the first original Team Avatar, was Toph. She's my
Oh,
girl.
that's
I love
right.
her to death. I
Yeah.
identify with an Earthbender. I feel like she's like my spirit animal,
Yes.
whatever you want to call it. So to be introduced to Lynn and to see who she is,
Yeah.
who she's related to, and what she does, and how much that metal bending carried on with not just within Lynn, but how the police force used it. I was fascinated by it. So I would say towards the end when Lynn essentially decided to sacrifice herself and stay
Yeah.
behind, and she
Incredible.
single-handedly just brought down one of the airships and was almost successful to that second one before they got her, was one of my favorite moments. And I was like, dang, this girl was already beat up. She should have been in the hospital already. And she's just without a second thought to protect Tenzin and his family. And the fact that when she was about to get her bending taken away, she really didn't show that moment of weakness at all. She just took it because she knew the risk, and she had accepted it already. And I thought, wow, what a powerful moment.
It's an incredible moment, and it's a very cinematic. You know what I thought, and I know I'm probably using this word too much when it comes to shows like these. It's a very adult moment where
Yeah.
we get to see the weight and the stakes of something like this show, which I love about the Avatar world and the Korra world, is that we get to see, yes, a lot of fun and a lot of light, but we also get to see like she literally hold the entire airbending race on her back, because the idea of exterminating a race, I was like, yo, that's kind of like genocide.
Yeah. What's up with the
It's
airbenders always getting that, like the last airbender?
yeah, and it's like you kind of an incredible moment. I mean, the way she like takes it apart and then gets electrocuted at the end and she sacrifices herself,
Hmm.
perfect. That's a perfect moment.
Yeah.
I'll go to mine. I already said my General Ira moment. That's probably one of my favorite moments
Okay.
ever. Another quick little Amon moment, just because I love Amon. I think he's incredible. Uh, is when Tarlok tries to blood bend Amon, and he's slowly moving through it, like he's just pushing right through it. And Tarlok says, "What are you?" And he says, "I am the solution." And then he takes away his bending. I thought that was a And I love that line too. I was like,
Yeah.
yo, Amon is
So
like next
good.
level. Yeah,
Yeah.
literally one of my favorite moments in the show, and it really made me think about who the character was, that he can actually withstand bloodbending, which again led to a lot of speculation as far as like, could he be a bloodbender? Uh,
Mhm.
even in that episode, which I believe it's episode 10 or 11,
Yeah.
10, 10, which is an incredible moment. And again, Amon, let's finish up there.
Oh, yeah.
Amon's death, another thing that people were very mad about. I remember clearly as if it were yesterday when I was reading the comments in the forums, and people were like very upset that he died, how he died, the fact that they had to get rid of his character when he was one of the best characters on the show, the fact that Tarlok killed him. Like, there's a lot there. What do you think about his death?
I was really surprised that they did what they did because I felt like a character and the storyline and the motivation, especially for someone like Amon slash Noatak, was someone worthy of bringing back in the final season
Yeah.
as like whether it like like a showdown before the final showdown or the final showdown. Just so,
Mhm.
and I thought it would have been like full circle for Korra to, in the beginning she was just like struggling to unlock airbending for herself and having to do this and then achieving airbending by the end of it when he took away all the other bending and have it be full circle come back when she's trained with all four elements now and trying to bring balance and everything and being the avatar to bring him back into her storyline one more time for another showdown. I would have actually really loved to see that. So I was not happy that he just like blew up and well, he didn't even blow himself up. His brother did it, but I
Yeah,
was
Tarlok.
really surprised. Like when I saw what he was gonna do when he put on the glove, and I was like, what's he? What is he? And then the explosion happened, and I thought, oh, I was really hoping for this character to come back in another season. So I was actually not too pleased about that.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of disappointing in a way, but at the same time, you realize like he's kind of too powerful to keep alive.
I
So you
guess,
kind of
yeah,
justify the idea of him dying. But at the
yeah,
same time, the idea of him being out there and not knowing where he is, you just know that he's alive and he escaped on a speedboat
hmm,
with his brother. And I don't know. I just feel like if you really think about it, out of all the characters inside, well, Zahir is another one, Kavira is another one. They're all great villains.
yeah,
Uh, but Ahmad has the most tragic backstory where he just wanted to spend time with his brother at the very end where he's like, we can take on the world, brother. Let's do it. And he obviously takes his life.
yeah.
It just really opens up the possibility of like the character and where he could have gone, even the threat of him being out there, even if he never showed up again. But you just have the idea in the back of your head of like, ooh, Amon's still out there. Like, what can happen?
Exactly. It could have been like a very Sherlock Holmes versus Moriarty type of a thing throughout the
Mm,
series. Just and you're right. Even if he didn't show up again and that was his send off, it still kind of would give Cora kind of an unease in the back of her mind always. Like, the
yeah.
next time her body is out of control, she's like, is he back? She's always gonna look over her shoulder just a little bit. And uh but you're right. It's he probably is too powerful to keep around the whole series.
Yeah, and again, they wanted to introduce new villains throughout the
Mhm.
entire show, so I'm sure they were like, "We can't just have the same villain keep popping up because we have ideas for these new ones who are also incredible, and who are also we're going to eventually talk about on this series of the Legend of Korra recap. This was season 1. Wendy, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate you being here. Where can everyone find you?
This was so much fun. Thank you so much
Right?
for having me back on. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, at Wendy Lee Zaney, and you can find me on YouTube at The Movie Couple. Just search The Movie Couple channel, and we will pop up.
Obviously, guys, go support her. I think she's incredible, and go support the movie couple. I think that's a great channel as well. So, thank you so much about talking about Korra with me in season 1. I know a lot of people are split on as far as how they feel about season 1. I think everyone can kind of agree on seasons 3 and 4, but season 1 and 2 are people kind of split on it versus me, who just enjoys all 4 seasons. So I'm glad I found you to talk about season 1 because I love this show and I think season 1's great. So,
Everybody
alrighty,
does.
guys. Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, guys. For the Korra recap, I'm Andres. That was Wendy. We're peacing out. Peace out.